Hello and welcome to Unite to Fight 2024, where we will spend some time with Dr. Linda Gang, followed by patient activist Paul Hennessy, and following Paul will be David Tuller, Doctor of Public Health. My name is Gary Anderson, and I live in North Carolina. I had worked 42 years on the front lines of healthcare until long COVID had other plans for me. Dr. Linda N. Gang is Clinical Associate Professor at Stanford University in California, where she also serves as co-director of Stanford's Post-Acute COVID-19 Syndrome Center. She brings an accomplished scientific mind in molecular biology to our world, clinical world, of patients and healthcare providers. Dr. Gang will have 20 minutes, and there will not be a question and answer period afterwards. I will return with 2 minutes to spare Dr. Gang to signal when we're near the end of your session. Welcome, Dr. Linda Gang, to Unite to Fight 2024.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the organizers for the opportunity to be part of this wonderful international conference. I will share my screen. Do the slides appear?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. All right. Well, again, thank you. And it's a privilege to be able to talk about the work that we do as a team. It's a part of a large collaborative. So it's clinical and research efforts from our Stanford Long COVID Collaborative, which includes many folks and many efforts. And I am here on the behalf of the entire team to represent a lot of the work that is being done. And long COVID, as you all know, continues to be a major health problem. And of course, it goes by several different names. We'll refer to it as long COVID here, but also known as PASC, PCC, COVID long hauler. We're currently in our clinical realm using the CDC definition in terms of long COVID broadly defined as signs, symptoms, and conditions that continue or develop after COVID-19 infection, but there are several definitions out there as well. And of course, globally, many, many millions of people have been or continue to be affected by long COVID. And the latest CDC National Center for Health Statistics in the United States estimates that about 7% of all adult Americans are still currently experiencing long COVID as of February and March of 2024. And it was also mentioned previously in terms of Brookings Institute data about millions of Americans who have lost jobs and have been impacted who were previously working by long COVID. So the sheer, the magnitude of this problem continues to be major. And I echo the prior sentiments of resources that need to be put into place to continue to address this important problem, both from research to clinical care to policies. And so I am representing our Stanford Long COVID Collaborative, where our mission is to advance the care and understanding and treatment for long COVID and related infection-associated chronic illnesses and complex conditions. And we do this through a really large group effort. It's what we consider team science and team medicine, which I think are so important really to address contemporary healthcare problems where there's multidisciplinary expertise that is needed and different collective intellect that need to be harnessed and perspectives as well. So we have our clinical team as well as research collaborators and a lot of our clinician specialists pictured here who see patients also do research as well. And I'd like to highlight my co-director and co-founder, Dr. Hector Bonilla, who is also the lead for the Stanford ME/CFS myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome clinical program and research as well. And Dr. Bonilla has been fantastic in leveraging also his experience in this space of infection-associated chronic illnesses and being able to help co-lead, as well as I'd like to highlight some of our other co-leads and core leadership team, including Dr. Bob Schaefer, who's had prior history of, who's a world expert in HIV and thinking about chronic viral infections, as well as Dr. Philip Yang, who is doing a lot of work in the digital realm in terms of, who's a cardiologist and doing a lot of work in digital wearables and being able to understand those types of measures in our patient populations, as well as Dr. Mitchell Miglis, who is a leading expert in particular post-COVID POTS, and has, of course, has a lot of experience in both the neurology, autonomic, as well as sleep. But we are leveraging expertise from many different departments and specialties and expertise, and our incredible research collaborators in infectious diseases, immunology, informatics, and others. And we're really excited to push forward with this effort. What I'm going to talk about is just a few highlights of a lot of the work. It's by no means comprehensive of everything that's going on and being done here at Stanford, but I hope to share some clinical observations and findings that we've gathered through the years of our program, and then also talk about some of the clinical trials efforts, as well as most recently, we are also part of a large initiative that's national to try to improve care and care access as well. So in terms of clinical observations and findings, when we started the clinic, this was earlier on in the pandemic, this was back in early of 2021. And when we looked at our first 134 patients, we, in our patient population, we had patients who actually, most of them were not hospitalized. At this time, many programs were still formulated around post-hospitalization follow-up and ICU follow-up in the pulmonary or rehab setting. And our clinic took a different approach of looking in the outpatient setting, and while we also had hospital discharge follow-ups, it was clear to us that this wasn't just sequelae from hospitalization. There were many who were previously healthy, who were had even mild or minimally symptomatic COVID, but had lingering symptoms that were extremely, or new symptoms that were extremely severe and debilitating. And so if we look at the frequency, here's a list of various symptoms that were assessed in the clinic and the number of patients, and by a patient self-report Likert severity score, 5 being the most severe, we can see that the most common symptoms, fatigue, post-exertional malaise, brain fog, unrefreshing sleep, were also tended to be the most severe and correlated with each other. And these were oftentimes, when asked about, for patients, some of the most bothersome and debilitating symptoms as well that interfered with ability to function and do daily activities. And if you look at some of these symptoms, of course, they also overlap with other syndromes, including what we found was about 43% of our patient population have symptoms that meet the Institute of Medicine 2015 diagnostic criteria for myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome, ME/CFS. We also separately, led by Dr. Miglis, found from a global survey study that about 66% of adults with long COVID had symptoms indicating autonomic dysfunction. This is based on the COMPASS 31 questionnaire, and there wasn't much of significant difference whether individuals were hospitalized or non-hospitalized, but the rate was very high. And it suggests that we should be looking out for signs of autonomic dysfunction in our patient populations and in patients who are post-COVID. And for example, in certain subcategories, we can think about orthostatic intolerance, vasomotor changes, for example, to the limbs, changes of color or temperature sensitivities, secretomotor excess sweating and changes in sweating, gastrointestinal, motility issues, bladder changes, pupilomotor reactions, orthostatic hypotension, and of course, things like tachycardia and other signs of dysautonomia. And so this is similar to the current thought in the field by many, which is that long COVID is a syndrome of syndromes. And of course, the definition there's multiple definitions, and of course, as we more deeply understand long COVID, we can better refine and define different subtypes and understand the different phenotypes as well. And here, you can see that there are direct sequelae, direct impacts from the acute COVID-19 infection, including organ damage such as pulmonary fibrosis or stroke, MIS, especially in children, and hospitalization complications, post-intensive care syndrome for those who were in the ICU. A lot of the symptoms here also greatly overlap with a lot of the, domains of cognitive, with physical function as well as others. So, and treatment-related effects as well from being in the hospital and receiving treatment there or hospital-acquired conditions. Other post-infectious phenomenon, for example, known autoimmune conditions such as Guillain-Barré syndrome and other conditions as well. Now, these have been, recognized for other conditions as well, other infections and ICU situations and stays for patients. What is less well characterized in medicine in general, it's been unfortunately a neglected area of medicine, but I am glad that we are now putting light to it and pushing forward on better research and more characterization and understanding of the other symptoms and syndromes that overlap with previously, poorly studied areas of medicine and poorly understood areas of medicine. So things like fibromyalgia, and functional gastrointestinal disorders, ME/CFS, POTS, and other conditions as well. And I also highlight here a subcategory of olfactory dysfunction. What we do find, which is consistent with the RECOVER study in the JAMA 2023 paper, is that there are certain individuals who seem to have more isolated olfactory dysfunction. Now, you can have olfactory dysfunction, smell, taste changes, that are also associated with many of the other symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, etc. But there are individuals who also just come and present with that without other associated symptoms. So this also needs deeper understanding of what phenomenon is occurring there as well. And what we also have found in a retrospective study, this is not a clinical trial, but this is an exploration and understanding of what we're clinically observing so that it can generate hypotheses and provide information for what should be tested rigorously in a randomized controlled trial. We and others have found, so for example, there was other study as well in Ireland, and we know others are also testing and studying low-dose naltrexone. But what we found is that in our patient population, for those who were put on low-dose naltrexone off-label, that it seems to be a safe and low-cost therapeutic candidate for long COVID treatment and improvement of certain symptoms and functional status in the subset of patients who received this. And so we believe that this should be rigorously studied in well-designed randomized clinical trials. And I believe in Canada at UBC that this is underway, and hopefully look forward to seeing the results of that study as well by our Canadian colleagues. In terms of other clinical findings that I'd like to highlight, we also observed over time that many patients were reporting to us, and therefore published a case series, that patients with long COVID also, some have developed new intolerance or sensitivity to alcohol. This may seem like a minor thing, but it may reflect, and it's important because first of all, there might be lifestyle changes that could be helpful in management. If this is a trigger or an exacerbation or worsening of symptoms, then patients should be counseled to understand if that could be a potential trigger and avoid such substances. But also, in terms of clues to underlying mechanism, why would this be happening all of a sudden? Why would there be new intolerance or sensitivity to alcohol? And it's not just alcohol. There are many other chemicals or substances and other things in the environment and food that patients develop sensitivities to. So this warrants further investigation, both mechanistically as well as how this might have implications for clinical care as well. And some of the thoughts, that could be proposed include, for example, inflammatory processes that could impact the blood-brain barrier so that substances have, even at lower doses, can have higher impact and effect from a neurochemistry standpoint. There could be also other pathways, maybe with the microbiome and disruptions and changes in that, or metabolism. And all these are, I think are really important to understand better and deeper. Additionally, there's a lot of talk and sort of buzz initially also about long COVID and vaccine effects. There have been reports in the media of individuals getting better after receiving COVID vaccines, but we've also found opposite stories as well, where patients felt worse. So we wanted to better understand what are patients reporting in a more systematic manner. So based on patients' self-recall of different associated changes of their long COVID symptoms, this is, again, looking back in time for their own subjective recall, is that most reported not feeling any different in terms of long COVID based on receiving additional post-COVID vaccine doses. Again, this isn't about pre-COVID vaccination, which there's been a lot of data and studies on. There's not a lot of studies on post-COVID vaccination, its impact on the long COVID trajectory. Although vaccines do seem to provide a benefit for helping to reduce the chances of getting long COVID, although nothing is a guarantee, that's for sure, because people who have breakthrough still get post-COVID, long COVID. So now I'm going to move to clinical trials, and we're running low on time, so I'll try to go through this pretty quickly. We're just highlighting a few of the trials and hopefully data to come very soon. Our STOP-PASS trial, which is testing Paxlovid for PASS, where we tested 15 days of the antiviral Paxlovid to understand if it could reduce symptom severity in those with long COVID. And this also has objectives of understanding biological markers as well as digital biometric wearable signatures of long COVID. And we hope to share results very soon. And then we're also part of Recover Initiative, which is the NIH sponsored initiative that's national here in the United States. And there are several trials that are active and ongoing across the country, and that includes looking at viral persistence, another Paxlovid study, particularly also looking at longer duration, sleep, autonomic dysfunction, cognitive dysfunction, and fatigue as well. And then finally, how do we care for more patients, better reach vulnerable communities, and support primary care? Because it really, a lot of specialized long COVID clinics don't have the capacity to serve all the demand and need that is out there. So AHRQ, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, has set out this national learning network for which we are a part, including 8 other long COVID programs, to develop and innovate care models. And this will be so important to understand how we can reach more vulnerable patient populations who don't have a voice, who can't access care. It's already a problem, and especially a problem for those with lower resources and barriers to care already. So we're working with a lot of healthcare partners as well as community partners who are serving the underserved, and to better solve this issue and help raise awareness and diagnosis in primary care and care with multidisciplinary specialists. And finally, with that, in terms of future directions and priorities, this is a team effort globally. And so harnessing the collective intellect of the village is really important, and improving care, especially promoting equity. And we need to, in parallel, advance knowledge and therapies in terms of mechanisms at the same time as we better characterize phenotypes and clinical manifestations and perform rigorous clinical trials, because we urgently need approved therapies, evidence-based therapies to help those in need.
Dr. Linda Gang, thank you so much for your for being an example of how care can be delivered to our patients, to our long COVID, to a population that needs the kind of connectedness that obviously your clinic has with patient to the clinical world and to other providers, to the primary care people. So once again, thank you so much. This has been Dr. Linda Gang of Stanford University's Post-Acute COVID Syndrome Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to all.